So in preparation for this, I got another deja vu about myself. It's pretty wonderful. And that was that I was blessed with a work experience that just I was going right down the path to work in aerospace. And I would share that back with you. Like when I was in high school, all of us who could do math and science and do it well, all of us went on to engineering. I was the exception as a female, of course. But the females had dropped out maybe sophomore year. They didn't take algebra. And I don't think they had to take physics. And I'm eating this stuff up. It's great, I thought. So let me tell you what happened. I was in college, and I started a physics major. I was in college. I was in a lucky to be alive auto accident in Florida. Before seat belts, we rolled the car, spun the car, and rolled it down an embankment. And my arm, the car ended up upside down, and my arm was outside the car, and the top of the door was, I have a beautiful scar. So I got this scar. Fortunately, somebody saw it. It was a rainy morning, and a car far behind us saw it, and they came after us, and then they arranged for help, and they took me one way to the hospital, and my roommate who was driving, it was spring break, was taken the other way, so we weren't even in the, and I was in deep shock, reliving the movements in the accident. Anyway, so I was in an accident. I had been in college, and now I had a severe whiplash injury, and I'm wearing a collar. And I had babysat for nice people in a neighborhood, rural neighborhood, not many neighbors. And they, I think for my good, they said, well, as I was getting better, and I was going to be out of school for 9 months, they said, well, did you take drafting? And I said, yeah, I took drafting. They said, well, we have a job for you. And I really think it was the kindness of their heart. So I went to work in Newark, New Jersey, and the company was building cryogenic containers. So here I am, right? Tick number one. And they were building cryogenic containers. Those are containers that hold liquid nitrogen, liquid oxygen, liquid helium. And they're really double-walled thermos bottles. And I got to design one. It's not very complicated, but I got to design one. It was double-walled, really two containers. You had to do, the outer container was shaped like this, and like a thermos bottle, and then the inner container had a really long neck, and then a bulb. So you filled up the nitrogen in the outer container, so you chilled down this inner container, and then you added the liquid helium. Because liquid helium, if I remember correctly, is at 2 degrees absolute, very, very cold, and therefore if the things around it aren't cold, it gases off immediately, gone, and you lose it. Helium is also controlled by the government. I don't know all the reasons why it's so important, but I know that it's involved in weapons and other things. So we were doing these containers for Bell Labs, and you've heard of Bell Labs, right? I grew up in the area of the original Bell Labs. So I now was designing containers because they were doing the experiments. And why do they want to work at such low temperature? The molecules stop moving, so you can study them better. And they were used in nuclear stuff, and that was going through Princeton, New Jersey. There was a special lab, and I never really knew what it was doing, but that's where they were being supplied to, in addition to Bell Labs. So now I'm into the containers and cryogenics. Okay, I go to the company as a drafts person, right? And I'm drawing those containers, right? But now I'm seeing how they're manufactured. Mm-hmm. And they were stainless steel, and welding is an art when you're doing high chrome stainless steel. It may always be an art, but definitely is there. And there were two brothers. They could weld this stuff like it was butter. And the welds were solid. problem is with a weld, it's not always solid all the way through. So in the case of these vessels, it could leak. That's a no-no, totally, because at some point you're dealing with oxygen. Just which one of you is interested in the oxygen?
Well, that was all of us. Well, it was mainly Tommy's design, the hydrogen.
So what are you doing now? Are you pursuing that, or are you?
It's sitting on the shelf. I was hoping I could figure out a way to separate the hydrogen and oxygen, to filter out the oxygen, or somehow do like Michael Faraday did. But the problem is the surface area. In order to create enough hydrogen, the more surface area you have between the plates. The plates need to be kind of close together. Have a low internal resistance. So, I mean, I don't know how well that would work with just an anode way over here and a cathode way over here. How much hydrogen would actually produce?
Neither of you have taken chemistry, correct?
In high school, I don't remember much of it though.
You really, I would encourage you. Well, have you heard about the Khan Academy? KHN?
Yeah, I think you
Or
actually
maybe for
emailed
me.
me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I bought a lot of school books after school and started reading them. Pastime reading. Learn. I didn't do very well in school.
That doesn't matter.
It was my own fault, but I started
But
reading
you were in a
stuff
different
after
place,
school.
right? Because now you're in a different place now. It doesn't really matter, except you've had experiences there that will probably help you going forward. But if this is what you're doing, you really need a footing. What you're doing is fine, except you're not really going to get anywhere if you don't understand, in a broader sense, all the chemical, like the periodic table. There's a reason, it's their energy and properties of the materials that make up everything we have on the planet. And I would encourage you, that here you have the enthusiasm and you're looking at things and you're doing things. Well, get some education under it so that you can do more, or you can be brighter about what you're doing, or you can go in another direction. That's my sales pitch.
I
So
totally
then,
agree with
I'll
you.
go back to my presentation unless you got something else.
I just want to say I agree with you.
You agree with me?
I wish I would have paid more attention.
The nice thing about it now is if you go back to school, you should really burn up the track because of maturity. Takes application though.
Burn up my wall too.
Okay, so due to my neighbors, I went to work, and they gave me that job. Now I'm working in this cryogenic company, and we're designing things for Bell Labs. But for me personally, I'm excited about cryogenics, and I'm studying. I went and worked for them several industry periods. So I went back to Drexel University in Philadelphia after working with them, because I really now had working knowledge of cryogenics. And I took a class I think the class was heat transfer maybe. And the professor was going to speak on cryogenics. Ooh, wow, I'm all excited. And he gets up there. I know more about cryogenics now than he does, because he's in a university setting, and I'm doing it. I thought, well, that's interesting and disappointing. A couple of things happened like that. But anyway, so I got the cryogenics, and then I don't remember how I got employed at Reaction Motors, it was called. That was the rocket engine company in northern Jersey. And that was founded by the 4 original founders of the American Rocket Society. And they were doing things because they studied Goddard. And Goddard was the one who proved we could escape gravity in experimentation. He proved it through his experiments. Do you know how we escape gravity?
Punch a hole through the atmosphere.
You have to, Goddard proved with a rocket that if the rocket can burn up its mass as it's increasing its acceleration, it can escape gravity, because it's like burning itself up. That's what a rocket does. great speed, it becomes you're burning up the fuel, so its weight is less, and it's moving faster, and then it can escape gravity. Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, the 4 scientists who were the American Rocket Society founded this company, Reaction Motors. Interesting, and proved the usual thing that scientists are lousy managers. Really, they're lousy managers. You're all smiling, but that's the case. So the company floundered, and then it got. By the time I got there, none of them were involved. But they had started the computer guys. They'd started in a garage, and they blew something out of it, when they were doing their experimentation. So they were gone, and now they were getting contracts from the government, because the government's looking into, they saw the prospects for weapons, so they're looking into it. And then it was a whole setup. The major contracts, as I remember, were governmental, government finance. And so and I think that was purposeful. I think the government kept an eye on companies like this who were doing things that they could see was going to have it could lead to good weapons.
How many companies do you think that they were keeping an eye on? Were there 20 companies like that? Were there 50 at that time? And what was the interest by industry?
There weren't many. There weren't many that I know about. There could very well have been some that were working under secret classifications that we wouldn't know about. You wouldn't get it in the newspaper, you wouldn't get it in the news. But there weren't many. There was someone on Long Island, and then we were there, and then there was work going on the West Coast, but these operations weren't working together. So let me take you back to the cryogenic company. Next thing, they're starting to do heat exchangers. They're starting to do valves, explosive valves. I don't think explosive valves existed before this. And the explosive valves were needed in rocketry because you needed to get that valve to open absolutely as quickly as you can. So they created an explosion. Like when you wanted the liquid oxygen to flow, you had to snap open this stuff and let it flow. So now I'm working with the hardware, right? Because neighbors were kind to me.
That's crazy.
Yeah, pretty crazy. And then, and I could say that the accident contributed to that because I think they really wanted to help me, and they felt sorry for me, that I was going to be out of school, and they knew the finances were not very good. So they offered me this job. So now I've got like step number 2 toward aerospace. And then Thiokol, I told you the story, Thiokol bought Reaction Motors, but Reaction Motors had already developed a solid propellant. So that's what Thiokol took through the next stage, because the engines they made and on the Challenger were solid, no longer liquid. And that was a great blessing, because liquid oxygen is so tricky. Did you know about the astronauts who were in the astronauts in testing? This was the Mercury astronauts, and they were testing inside the capsule, which was mounted, stationary, not going anywhere, but they were put in a pure oxygen environment, and there was a spark. Fire on the, I used to remember what they said. I think they said, fire on the spacecraft. Either that or fire on the aircraft. But they got that call out, and they were tried.
I think my class went and saw that site. There's a plaque there, I think. This is down near Cape Canaveral.
Right, there would be a plaque.
I think there's a commemorative area there.
Gus Grissom, I used to remember all. I actually met the first astronauts. And the thing you might find interesting was, I think it's correct to say none of them were as tall as I am. Very small. Well, they were being put in this capsule that was really not designed for human beings.
Right.
And that was one of the things, to my knowledge, there were women in the preliminary stages of this. Now, I heard John Glenn say, there never were any women in this program. That wasn't my understanding, but he might have been correct, so I don't want to say that. but it would have been a smart place to put women. And that's what the Russians did. In their Sputnik, after Sputnik, they pushed up a woman, Katerina, I think. So the Russians got the first thing in space, and then the first woman in space.
You know, women can handle G-forces better. They don't pass out as quickly as men.
They handle quietness better, you know, aloneness, right?
Yeah.
And they're smaller. So this capsule was really important. A 6-footer, no way.
Well, it costs so many millions per pound to send something into space. I've joked with people about why don't we have little people as astronauts?
Use the smaller people.
I mean, this would be like, but people just laugh at me. But think about it. You don't really need to have long appendages and stuff. I mean,
well, and it was so tight.
Yeah.
And then the tightness, a reflection on the tightness was one of the capsules came down with Grissom. I happen to remember his name. And he panicked.
He popped the hole. I remember that.
And he popped the thing and it started to fill up with water, salt water. So all of the data was lost. Big loss. You know, just, and I would tell you one other thing about John Glenn. I lived at the beach in Southern California, and when I left home, he was starting to cross the Indian Ocean. Right? By the time I got to work, he crossed the Indian Ocean, and I'm trying to get my head around that. You know, that in this short, like 45 minutes or something.
Is it 17,000 kilometers an hour or something? What is it?
It's a big one.
Fastest man in the world, right?
Yeah. and he was really a pretty perfect first man to put up in orbit, because he was a cool cucumber. They were broadcasting the communication at the Cape on his orbit, right? And so we were hearing it. You know, we were supposed to be working.
Oh yeah, right.
You know, we're so excited, forget it. And when he was up there, he said something, and the response was a positive. And what had been asked was, what was in that? The indication was that the heat shield had been blown off. Well, if you're an astronaut,
right?
The indication was it had been blown off. If you're an astronaut sitting in there, that means you're dead, because that heating shield is all you had to protect you. They turned it around and came back in backwards. Like his heart rate did not change a beat.
Holy cow!
Can you believe that?
Gunfighter.
Well, obviously I'm not an astronaut.
I had heard that up to the time that Glenn went up, half of the rockets had failed in the testing.
No.
So he knew when he got in that ship that half of the prototypes had failed. He had a 50% chance.
I don't know if it was 50%, but I hate to say it. Well, you know, everything was new about it.
Right.
So it's not surprising that there was 50% failures.
But just that he knew that. I mean, he was a pretty tough, cool customer. You're right.
All of them, they were sitting on a bomb. Literally, you know. And the earliest launches of the Atlas, there were 3 young engineers who designed equipment so that if there was something that went bad early on, before they left the Earth's atmosphere, it would pull the capsule off and take it away, get it out of the path of the bomb.
I see. So
and we never had to use it, but they did address that safety concept. You know, that if something goes wrong when they're sitting on it on the pad, that's very bad, and that's different than when it's up there with the heat shield and it's out of the environment. So, you know, I think I feel like that some of the appreciation for what so many of these people did was incredible. Not only the person involved in the experiment, but the design and the thinking and the new materials. Jumping ahead just for a minute, I was out there when Johnson announced that we were going to the moon within the next decade. All of us were in shock, because we knew what we didn't have to do that, right? I mean, we were walking around, I was glassy-eyed. Not that I was a scientist, but I knew what it meant. Next thing you know, there's a new building, right? And they put in a long arm, and they could sit a man in a capsule-like thing at the end of it, and they spin him around, and they got, I don't know if it wasn't anything like minutes, 2 seconds maybe of G loadings, because they didn't know how we were going to react. And we don't do very well in zero gravity. We're designed for gravity, obviously. And did you hear about the astronaut recently that was up on the space station for a year? And when he came home,
The twin brother, right?
He was two inches taller, but in one day, I believe it was one day, he was back to normal height with the pull of gravity.
Even when you sleep, you're taller in the morning when you wake
Absolutely,
up than when you
you
lie
are.
down. For the same reason, you stretch. The cells are like little springs,
Yeah,
and they
well,
stretch.
they're allowed to puff up
Right.
to what they are fully.
That's neat. Yeah.
Okay, so let me get back to this, or we'll be here. How long do we usually run? Doesn't
Still,
matter.
yeah.
Anybody.
As late. We usually get home about midnight.
So I went to the rocket engine company. I missed financing myself. I've been gutsy about a bet on stock. And then I told you that we moved to this storeroom, and I existed in it, I don't know, 9 months or something, and I sent my one application out to General Dynamics Astronautics, right?
She said she went from this place that had huge picture windows. And
Oh, it was a wall, the whole wall.
And then they moved them into a basement.
Well, and a basement's bad enough, but this was a basement storage room. And I looked at the lights. Well, we were desk workers, so we needed light, and the light was really not sufficient. But I knew about engineering, so I calculated what the lighting should be. So I gave it to my manager, and he took me to meet his manager, who went, ooh, really cool.
Oh shit!
They fixed the lights, though, and also I learned something important on that job, too. We had so much work. We were the tech writers reporting to the Air Force on what was being developed, because this was it was the rocket engines. We were doing those reports. And so it was, I almost can't speak about it, because what they did was we had to work 48 hours, and we could work Monday through Saturday. For most of us, I tried the experiment, 12 hours a day for 2 days, 10 hours a day for 4 days to get that other day. And it was comp time, which I think now was illegal. Comp time meant you could take time off when you were allowed to take time off. But we were so busy and so far behind, we couldn't take time off. So when I left there, they owed me 30 days of comp time.
Did they pay you?
No, comp time was comp time. You know what I said? That's never happening again. Not that I would be willing to donate some, but not 30 days is a month, for Christ's sakes. That's a lot of time. And it was a lot of fatigue, because you were working tired. So I said, when I went out to work at General Dynamics, I said, okay, I'm going to give them a fair day's work. I'll even go over that. I'm going to give them a good day's work. But I'm not going to do like double time with comp time. So I got, that meant what I was doing, I took extra time on it, right? Because I slowed down.
Yeah.
And so I would reread the reports multiple times. And when they came out, they were very good. So I've forgotten how it happened, but anyway, a guy sat down next to me, too close. He said, what are you trying to do, make a card on this? That had happened to me before. And I'm like, no. And he says, I mean, no, I'm not trying to make a card. You're working too fast. I've already cut down. They want me to cut down more. But meanwhile, the managers had seen that my stuff was coming out pretty perfect. Well, because I was rereading it multiple times. They elevate me. Now, these people who want to slow, not that they didn't report to me, but their work came through me. Right? So that was another lesson. And then they certainly weren't friends. I just arrived, and now they're giving a report to me, and I'm correcting it or changing it.
Good for you.
the fun you have, right? So I went out to General Dynamics, and that was my first thing. I want to talk to you for a minute about Hillary, because I had secret clearance. Now, let me tell you what that meant in a simple matter. I often needed classified information for what was being written. So I had to go to a clock, I had to go to the, what they call it, some kind of officer, they called it, but it wasn't military. That was the title of his job, security officer. And he would walk to the cabinet with me, which had a bar down the side, with a lock, with a key. He would walk with me. I would have already signed that I was requesting that and getting it, so that record was down. He would open the file cabinet. I would watch as he got it out, and he would give it to me, and sometimes there's even a further check. 16 pages, 16 pages. Right? I'm being sure that nobody's going to ask me for 17. Right? So I get it out. I signed it out. It was given to me. And then when I came back, we reversed the procedure. So this stuff about Hillary, she was in total violation, didn't ever want to do what was right in my opinion. You know, just know, and then with her, she's in an environment where anybody in the world could pick it up, and she's using a cell phone, effectively. No, she's not on our team either. I don't think Obama is, and she isn't either. So, then, and this is a little background for what I'm going to do next. Then, I was an oddity, of course, right? I'm the first of all, I'm a female. And then they had colored badges for security. So I'm a candy striper, a red and white circular badge. And that indicates that I'm obviously at a management level. And we brought in, or General Dynamics brought in, they were building Convair airplanes down by the airport. So when they were populating the space facility, they brought lots of those people up. Not a clue about space, right? They were building airplanes flying air. And so they came up, and a lot of them were not candy strippers because they didn't have my education. So that I kind of was a walking, who's she? What's she do? How come she's a candy striper? Should she be cleared for that? You know, just all that stuff. But out of that, the public relations department spotted me. So they gave me an opportunity to present for somebody at lunch, like Kiwanis or one of those club business people in San Diego. So I go to present, and that went smoothly. The newspaper headline was "Missile, no mystery to engineering miss." Tricky, right? And so I spoke to them, and they were, you're going to see it. This presentation started there.
How many little girls saw that article and realized that they could go into engineering?
How many what?
How many little girls read that article in the paper and realized that engineering was something they could do?
I don't know. And I
Probably
don't know,
a lot.
in those days, it just wasn't. Well, I was at Drexel, right? Now I know the dean, and that's another story at the end of my presentation. The dean of engineering, he's a friend. And he says to me on the first visit, he was being bugged about the number of females in the engineering school. And he said, somebody's pushing him to say that they should be 50-50. And he said, what do you think about that? He said, it's ludicrous. Most females don't want to be an engineer. That's not how their heads work. I just happen to come with an engineering head in this other body. So he kind of looked at me, because, as you know, I think you know, the universities are so liberal, progressive, politically correct, right, that he's being pushed about some of this, and apparently didn't have a balance about it. He's a very good engineer. He knows his stuff. He formerly was the head of Georgia Tech's engineering.
Top engineering school in the country now. Did you know that? It overtook MIT this year.
No, I didn't know that. I would tell you, though, it was one of the schools I thought I wanted to go to.
Yeah.
And I am so glad I didn't. Here's this New York female. Can you imagine that? In the South, you know, in the South, that's a biggie with what the Southern woman is supposed to be, and with all these Southern men who want her to be that. That wasn't my part. And I think I couldn't afford it. I went to Drexel because it was a co-op program, although it was 5 years. And I think it's an excellent way to go to school, because by the time I was up to here, I just thought I couldn't learn another thing. That was 6 months. I went out and worked in industry. And I really am a worker. I like doing things. I don't like studying things as much, and I think you're the same way. Okay, let's see. So then I want to give you a little thing. In 1959, Russia launched Sputnik, ancient history for you, right? They put a missile, they put an object into orbit. It wasn't a missile, more like a capsule, but less than that. They just pushed something into space. So, and that infuriated the United States, because we were in competition with Russia, and they scooped us. So this space race was on, full speed ahead. The national honor was at stake. I mean, but the bigger thing was behind that. That's what you really heard kind of publicly. Behind that, it was recognized that if they could get something into space, they had nuclear warheads, huge at that time. They could push a warhead into space and can control it and drop a warhead in New York City, San Francisco. It was a huge threat militarily, which is why we got into what we got into in aerospace. But the real thing was this was an ICBM. You know what that means?
Intercontinental Ballistic Missile.
I had somebody ask me, I heard somebody ask that recently. Kyle asked it at my house, right? So that's the principle there, was what I just told you.
You've heard that term a lot in the radio.
You know who's doing it now? That's the threat with Iran. They have missiles. They can launch them, and poor Israel.